Here we are with the much anticipated Brutally Honest list, the top 10 PC games of the 2000s. There were a lot of great games in this decade, and narrowing it down to just 10 was rather difficult as many games had to be left off the list. But rest assured, this list was not made in haste. As we're sure many of you will disagree, we encourage you to comment, just keep it civil. There are two simple rules for being on the list. First, the game must have a PC version, no console exclusives. And two, the game must have been released between January 1st, 2000 and December 31st, 2009. Now, let's get at it.
Number 10.
In early 2000, gaming wizard Will Wright, who had brought out the inner urban planner and all of us with SimCity, introduced us to The Sims. The game where players create people and basically live their lives for them. Decorate their house, get them a job, find them a mate. Because these are all things gamers are great at in real life. Wright had done it again. A concept that seemed so simple and mundane on the surface had led to hours of intrigue. The game quickly became the best-selling PC game of all time, and with its umpteen expansions, it had gamers playing house for many years.
Number 9.
Most of the games on this list were huge, and chances are you've either played them yourself or at least know about them. Our number 9 title isn't as popular as the others, but nevertheless is one of the funnest strategy games ever made. Hearts of Iron 2 is a real-time World War II strategy game that on the surface seems simple, but in reality is very elaborate, challenging, and rewarding. The game is incredibly accurate with attention to historical detail. The people, events, locations, technologies, from countries big and small. Relive history or rewrite it. This is one of those games where literally hours would flash by in the blink of an eye, because there's nothing quite like saving the world or conquering it.
Number 8.
By 2007, technology had really ramped up the graphical ability of games, and as a consequence, gamers were demanding realism in their games. Well, by November of that year, they got just that, with Call of Duty 4: Modern Warfare. Beautifully designed landscapes and skins were just the beginning. Infinity Ward took it to the next level by working with real Marines and combat veterans to give the game that added sense of reality that many had felt post-World War II games lacked. From dialogue, to movements, to audio, it changed the way we look at first-person shooters and forced developers to scramble as they tried to duplicate it.
Number 7.
It seems that even as far back as the 80s, every superhero had a video game. Unfortunately, many of them were pretty lame. They generally either had nothing to do with the comics, or the gameplay was just plain boring. In late 2009, Rocksteady Studios changed all that with Batman: Arkham Asylum. How'd they do it, you ask? Well, first they get a guy that's been working on Batman a number of years to write it. Then they get established voice actors from the animated series to reprise their roles.
You have one chance to surrender, Quinn.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman!
Next, they gave it an artistic and beautiful realistic environment, then allowed the player to control the greatest detective of all time in a free-roaming world, and need I say more? Part action game, part puzzler, pure Batman. Who hasn't wanted to control the Bat through an amazing story? Well, here's your chance.
Number 6.
In the summer of 2000, PC gamers across the world shut their curtains and stayed inside like never had been seen before. Players were returning to Sanctuary, of Diablo II that is. I had never seen such unity in gamers before or since even. Nearly every gamer I talked to for the rest of that year was spending most of their free time playing this. I know to a lot of you younger players out there, you're saying, this looks terrible. You just can't understand. After the endless hours of fun on your own, you could also play the game with your friends on the early days of Battle.net. And in these days, there wasn't many fun games to play online yet. Sure, there was Ultima Online and EverQuest then, but it was still too early for many people to even consider paying a subscription fee. Of course, many people recognize so much of Diablo's mechanics evolved into another giant of a game. But that doesn't take away from this classic dungeon crawler that was often imitated, but never duplicated.
Number 5.
By 2005, it was pretty clear games weren't just for kids. In fact, some of them weren't supposed to be for kids in the first place. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was an in-your-face, urban tale of gangsterdom set in early 90s Los Angeles. The game grew on the success of GTA 3 and Vice City, and Rockstar took what it had learned and applied it. The result? A game that gamers wanted. A detailed environment based on real-world locations. A setting that really puts you into a time and place. A massive world like no one had done before. Fun gameplay, and of course, a story that drew the player in.
You know what? I'm tired of your fucking little job.
Eventual controversy may have tarnished this game.
Video games with pornographic and violent content are being peddled to our children.
And in some opinions, knocked Rockstar way off the ladder.
The Federal Trade Commission should investigate the publication of the video game Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
But that hardly takes away from a game that's still fun to load to this day.
Temple chairs and a cocktail with some Nepalese munga munga.
Number 4.
Fans of the genre know that when it comes to strategy games, there's always one man you can turn to.
Hi, my name is Sid.
Hi, Sid.
And in the fall of 2005, he gave us Sid Meier's Civilization 4. Agreed by many to be the best of the series, Civ 4 capitalized on the series' strengths. Rich, in-depth gameplay, intuitive AI, and replay value like few others. The game's most frustrating feature was probably its most addictive but also rewarding. And that is the game's unforgiving nature that increases even higher with the difficulty. In fact, one wrong move can hinder you severely, even cost you the game. The worst part is, you might not realize it for another 30 turns. This forced the player to do some critical thinking and some intensive planning. And while the reward was nothing more than a video and bragging rights to your friends, sometimes the sweetest fruit is the one that's hardest to reach.
Number 3.
Enemy spotted. Roger that. Go.
Counterstrike didn't invent the online first-person shooter, but it did change it forever. The game originally started as a fan-created mod for Half-Life, and it didn't take long before Valve was supporting the development and an official release was made. Counter-Strike's emphasis on teamwork and strategy made it an instant hit among gamer groups. It wasn't long before clans were forming and some serious gaming was going down. Counter-Strike was at the center of the peak of esports in those days. With cash prizes totaling in the hundreds of thousands, it didn't take long before some players began getting very serious. While the competitive edge has shifted away from CS long ago, competitive team gaming and the FPS genre in general wouldn't be where they are today if not for Counter-Strike.
Counter-terrorists win.
Number 2.
Few video games whose mechanics are based on tabletop games tend to work out well. Knights of the Old Republic was a huge exception. The game's mechanics are based loosely on the D20 pen and paper role-playing game from Wizards of the Coast. It's set in a galaxy we're familiar with, but even a longer time ago, roughly 4,000 years before the movie series. KOTOR was a true role-playing game. You made decisions that affected not only your outcome, but of those around you, and the universe as a whole. BioWare's writers did a tremendous job drawing the player into the game through a wonderful story, told mainly through a series of dialogues. The player's words and actions would lead them either to the dark side or closer to the light, changing small outcomes and ultimately the course of the game. With so many options for character development and different choices to make throughout the game, it was like playing a completely new game your second time through. or even your 10th time through, whichever.
Number 1.
Love it or hate it, you simply can't deny it. On the 10th anniversary of the Warcraft franchise, Blizzard launched World of Warcraft, and the world of gaming has never been the same. At the time, gamers debated the merits of being able to justify paying for a game and then still having to pay a monthly subscription of $15 for it. Well, it wasn't long before gamers began to agree that it was viable, and in just 9 months into release, the game already had 4 million paying subscribers. By the end of the decade, that number would almost triple as the game launched its second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King.
Well, answer me this, suckers. How do you explain the Mohawk grenade?
The game sparked a cultural phenomena across the world,
Et je suis un mage.
leading to some moments we'll love to remember.
Let's do this. Leroy Dragons!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Save him! Oh geez, stick to the plane!
Oh Jesus, let's go.
Stick to the flag, Shove!
And some will try to forget. While many will argue the game has become stale over 8 years later, you have to give credit where credit's due. WoW is the best game of the decade. Period.